Good afternoon. On behalf of College of Nursing AIMS, New Delhi, in collaboration with Queen's University Belfast, Northern Ireland, and Focus Games at UK, I warmly welcome each and every one of you to the Level Up International Webinar Series on Gamification in Nursing Education and Research. This three-day event brings together innovators, educators, and researchers for pushing the boundaries of how nursing education can be transformed through game-based learning. Today, we have an exciting lineup of sessions. We begin with a keynote from Professor Christine Brown Wilson from Queen's University, who will set the stage for understanding the global context of gamification in nursing education. With that, it is my pleasure to officially inaugurate the Level Up International Webinar Series and invite our keynote speaker to begin the first session. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Prof. Latta, for your inaugural speech, and also for your very warm welcome to this webinar. I'm very excited to be here and to be, part of this really exciting opportunity. Okay, so today I really want to talk a little bit about serious games and how this is an opportunity for nurse education to really lead the way. So I will be showcasing a number of different projects that we're doing, but it will be a lot of what I'm going to be talking about is really how we might be able to develop serious games in nurse education, and how we can demonstrate a theoretical base for this, and how we can also demonstrate the evidence behind what we're doing, and really lead other health professions in this way. So again, you can get in touch with me via social media. I'm on Blue Sky, I'm also on X, and I'm also on LinkedIn, using mostly the same names. Little bit about where I come from. You'll probably hear from my accent. I'm actually not a native of Northern Ireland, but I have been living in Northern Ireland for the last 8 years and working at Queen's University Belfast. As you can see here, we have a beautiful Lanyon building. Our School of Nursing and Midwifery is a very large school. We have over 2,000 students, and we have over 90 PhD students. So we're probably one of the largest postgraduate research nursing programs in the world. You would all be very welcome to come and visit us. As you can see, we have a very beautiful island. I just want to acknowledge that the work that I'm going to be presenting is part of multiple collaborations with people across the UK, the island of Ireland, North America, Indonesia, and Singapore. But as you can see from these photos, we don't work in isolation. We work very much collaboratively with those with lived experience, with our students, and with colleagues from public health, from nutrition, and from in other disciplines in nursing, such as cardiovascular health. So one of the key features, I think, of our work is this collaboration. So firstly, I just want to talk a little bit about the difference between gamification and serious games. You're going to hear a lot about both gamification and serious games over the course of the next 3 days on this series. So if we just think about gamification, we use gamification a lot, and this is the use of game design to enhance academic performance without the actual creation of a game. So it may be embedded in another digital resource, and my colleague, Dr. Steph Craig, will be talking about that in the next presentation. But equally, we use this a lot across our practice, with our practice partners, to support the delivery of evidence-based information in a quick and accessible way for those who are busy in practice. And my colleagues across these next 3 days will talk about those practice-based interventions. Today, I'm really going to be speaking primarily around some of the serious games we've been developing, and think about the process behind this with a view that other people will be able to replicate this process. So if we think about serious games, they are really games designed for an educational purpose with a fun element, offering involving a level of competition. They can be actually played independently, or they can be played synchronously with multiple players at the same time. They address real-world topics in a gameplay context, so they really have all of the gameplay associated with that to actually increase the motivation, the enjoyment of increasing people's knowledge. And players cultivate knowledge and skills by overcoming a whole range of obstacles, and we'll talk about how we develop those as we go forward in this presentation. I want to just start off with a little bit of evidence about why we should be using serious games in health professions education. And this is and if anyone was at the webinar that I spoke to last year in India, I actually provided an overview of a range of the different systematic reviews that we were looking at. I'm absolutely delighted to be able to present on behalf of one of my PhD students, Basma Bin Laden, this results of her systematic review of systematic reviews, which is called an umbrella review. And what we've done in this, and I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Basma as part of the audience today. But what we did is we actually looked very closely at all of the systematic reviews. And as you can see from this Prisma diagram, we had a systematic process, and we actually found 20 systematic reviews from health professions education. And the purpose of this was to look at whether or not there were any patient outcomes addressed through serious games, whether, how serious games prepares health profession students for clinical practice, and also to evaluate the effectiveness of serious games compared to other educational methods, and also to look at the methodological quality. So what we found is that serious games are primarily used for knowledge improvement, psychomotor skills, particularly scenario-based simulation, cognitive skills such as the application of clinical knowledge, increased confidence, motivation. So a game combined with the use of a quest, collaboration, and narrative or storytelling really did increase students' motivation to play. And also we found through games increased empathy, so an improvement in attitudes, so reduced stigma and preparedness for clinical practice. We didn't find any that actually looked at the impact on patient care specifically, but what we did find is that students' attitudes did change. What you can see from this figure is that primarily serious games are used in nursing, and you can see the range of different games that are being used, and you can see nurses use escape rooms quite a lot. So we actually looked at some of this with a view to, well, how might we develop a serious game in relation to clinical skills? So the key findings from that review, and we are just in the process of publishing that. The protocol has been published, and we've got that reference for you. But do keep an eye out. We will be submitting this publication fairly soon. But what you could actually see is that the majority of the included reviews did focus on nursing. So we have the growing evidence base, we have the expertise in nurse education to really move serious games forward. We found that the multiple reviews found that serious games are at least as effective as traditional education, and in several cases were more effective, particularly in knowledge outcomes. And although serious games have not been shown to directly impact patient outcomes in existing reviews, research across those reviews have shown the educational and emotional effects on the undergraduate healthcare students. So this is showing some promise. So one of the things about the methodological quality was that it was variable. And what we did find was we needed actually more high quality research into serious games. So of course, this started us on our quest for the development of a serious game. And a lot of what we do is we think about how we develop our games using universal design for learning principles. So games are very useful because they give us multiple means of representation in acquiring information and knowledge. They're they're one expression to provide learners alternatives for demonstrating what they know. And it also provides multiple means of engagement to provide students with the options that maintain their interest. But the most important thing, if we are actually integrating these principles, is to ensure that we use both our students, our service users, and our staff in partnership to develop and co-design these games. So these are co-design principles that we use across the development of all of our games and gamified resources. It's an iterative process and it involves stakeholders. So we need to decide who those stakeholders are. In terms of the co-design that we use, it may be people with lived experience, so our service users. They are actually going to be telling us exactly what they think that nurses need to know when being cared for. We'll be using our academics because, of course, they have got that educational background, that they know the curriculum and what is required for the students, but we'll also involve the students, because they also know how they learn, and they are the ones that are going to be playing the game and using it. So co-design is very much a focused, time-bound activity that creates an output, but it does require shared leadership. So it's a really useful opportunity to enable those with lived experience and students and academics to come together and to share that leadership and to develop those and to share the decision-making in what actually needs to go into the game. So our first game, following on from that umbrella review, BASMA has designed a clinical skills game, and that clinical skills game came from feedback from both students and academics. The students were saying they were bored with some of the clinical skills and how it was being taught, and the educators were saying the students are not engaging and the students are feeling that they are very, that they're not coming prepared. So what we did is we did the first workshop with students. We asked the student perspectives of the value and challenges of this clinical skill development and what can be done to improve the student experience of clinical skills, because they were saying that they weren't really enjoying that and not getting the best out of that. So we developed that, so we collected that information using both stream of consciousness and ranking exercises. And then we engaged the educators. So this was an online workshop. So we asked the educators their perspectives of the challenges in clinical skills development and what could be done to improve both the student and the educator experience of clinical skills. And we collated that information. So we brought that information together, and then we invited both the students and the educators and the game developer, who is Focus Games, Melvin, to come along to our third workshop. And what we were able to do was actually demonstrate to both the students and the educators that they had very similar viewpoints. And it was really eye-opening to both the educators and the students that they thought the same things. So the benefit of bringing them together was very much them seeing that they were on the same page. But you can see that actually we had two separate workshops, and that was really because of the power differential. So these are educators who are currently educating our students. So we need to make sure that we can ensure our students are able to sort of freely speak with us. So they might not be able to do that in front of educators. But once we were able to present their information on their behalf and present the work of the educators, it became a much more a much more impartial environment. And they were all able to speak very openly and very plainly because they realized they were both on the same page. So the third workshop is about agreeing the purpose of the game, considering the content of the game, and then identifying the gameplay that will engage students. But there is quite a lot of work that happens after workshop 3. And from workshop 3 to this particular slide, there is quite a lot of scenario development that goes in. And thanks to both BASMA and my colleague, Shannon Porter, who is our Year 1 lead, for developing those scenarios. So what the students told us is that it would be much more effective for them if they had scenario-based. And we know from the umbrella review as well that scenario-based games do have a greater impact on students. So this is our first scenario. John Smith is in a hospital. He is a post-operative patient, and he's actually been admitted for observation following a low-grade fever and signs of possible infection. So we have to actually, so you can see from the bottom left-hand corner that we are about to go into John Smith's room, but we need to actually get prepared. So we need to actually identify things. So this is the first element of the game, is that students have to choose the correct equipment to take in with them. So they drag and drop these things across into their inventory. They then decide if they have enough. And once they have the right things, they are then open, the room opens and they're allowed into the room. And then they meet John Smith. So John is actually, the first thing you will do with a patient is you speak to them. So of course they have to go over to the patient and begin a conversation before anything else in the room can be enabled and enacted. And then there'll be different things that they have to do at different times. There will be things like this table that you can see in the bottom right-hand corner that, you know, they will have to choose things. They will have to make decisions about what they do. And then across the different elements of the game, they will have to answer questions as to what is the right temperature, what is the right oxygen saturation that they're expecting, and, you know, what is the right blood pressure. So again, it's actually testing their knowledge, but it's also testing their skill in how they put this knowledge together into one particular patient. Then there will be other elements within the game, for example, such as this drag and drop. So we want to make sure that students understand the importance of hand hygiene, how to do that. And so these drag and drop opportunities is a great way for the students to demonstrate and to practice their knowledge in terms of hand hygiene. So we're now just moving to a pilot control trial. So one of the other things that we found in the umbrella review was that we needed more high quality. So of course, when you think about high quality, you think about randomized controlled trials, but we do know that randomized controlled trials are highly problematic within an education system, particularly in higher education in nursing students. And so rather than going for a randomized control trial, we're trying a pilot control trial where we have 2 cohorts of students. So we have actually used our first cohort of student in our September cohort as our control group. So we've given them their usual clinical skills input, and we've asked them to do their questionnaires before and after the clinical skills. And then we're now moving on to our intervention group. So we have also collected the pre-data for that intervention group. We're now about to release the game out to them, and then they will still have their normal clinical skills, but they'll have the game as well. And then we will collect the post data after they have completed their clinical skills workshops, but before they actually undertake a simulation. So part of the motivation for the students to use the game is that it will help them in their simulation, which is a formative assessment. So we are using a waitlist control. We're measuring self-efficacy and motivation to learn. And then BASMA will also undertake focus groups to find out what the students thought about the game. And we will also release this game to our September cohort, who was our waitlist control, that they will also have access to this game as well. So that just takes you through the process of serious games and how we developed a clinical skills game. We then thought one of the things that came out from this particular umbrella review was the benefit of escape rooms. And you can see that there was quite a lot of escape rooms in nurse education, a lot of systematic reviews in escape rooms. So we're working with our colleagues at Belmont University in Nashville in the United States to actually think about, well, what are the effectiveness of escape rooms as a learning tool in health professions education? So we're undertaking a second umbrella review. We have it, we also have that umbrella review protocol published in Prospero, and it's just in process at the moment. But what you can see, again, we've undertaken that systematic review process. We've just completed the methodological quality of the systematic reviews, and again, we're finding they are very, there is a variance of methodological quality across the escape rooms. We've extended it beyond nursing to look at all health professions, and we're actually focusing from this on the features of escape rooms when used in health professions education, both face-to-face and virtual environments. And the purpose of this is to actually develop a delirium escape room. So we've done quite a lot of work as a team on delirium. We've developed a delirium digital resource that was co-designed with health with health profession students, with students from medicine, nursing and pharmacy and allied health across the island of Ireland. So building on that work, we're working with Belmont to undertake a student co-design process on how we might develop a delirium game that was in the form of a clinical escape room. So students from both Queen's and Belmont University came together, and we undertook 2 workshops. The first was actually, what do students need to know about delirium? So again, and what do students need to know about dementia? So we're doing both a delirium game, and then we're also going to be undertaking a dementia escape room as well, with the thoughts being that we will be able to build clinical escape rooms for multiple conditions. So because this team has done quite a lot of work on dementia awareness and dementia knowledge, and delirium, dementia and delirium were the first ones that we thought would be the best to do. So we got the students to think of case studies. And then we asked them to think about how dementia was different from delirium and what were the key points that students need to know in order to escape the room. So we did quite a little bit of work in that post-workshop. We actually refined those scenarios, and then we brought the students together in the following workshop to simulate the case, to identify the escape room layout, to write quizzes and puzzles, and to also undertake a podcast on their experience, so that other people can actually learn from what we've done. So again, we've worked very closely with Focus Games, so thanks to Melvin and his team who have produced this fabulous delirium game for us. So again, you can see we're using a fairly similar layout with our patient in our room. However, we've got a much more, this is a room that you can walk around. You can use the different arrows on either side of the room in order to see the different elements. And you have to decide the things that you need to do in order to assess this person for delirium, to treat that, and then to be able to escape the room. So this is just an example of one of the puzzles that we've got. If you need a clue, there are riddles that will actually support you. There are also things that you can click on in the room in order to identify, if you need further information. One of the things that we actually identified was there is a mnemonic used in the UK called Pinch Me, which actually is an aid memoir for people to think about the different causes of delirium. What we did find is that not all acronyms translate into different cultures, into different contexts. So that was something that was very interesting for us, but we've kept it in the game. And then what we've done is provided more information for people who might not be as familiar with this acronym. But as you can see from here, there are clues that you have to find in order to identify the different letters for that acronym. And then that shows you that there's also a support for the students to actually understand, well, what is it that the students need to think about? So this is for nutrition, and obviously if people don't have their dentures in, they're not going to be able to eat. So again, it's really helping students think through the decisions that they need to do in terms of making, for a good clinical outcome for their patients. So as I said, what we have discovered is that co-design needs to be culturally responsive. So we have worked with colleagues in Vietnam, in Singapore, and in Indonesia on both dementia and delirium and brain health games. So what we've developed is this culturally responsive co-design process that we work with people in the culture in which they are in order to what we need to know about that particular condition. So whether it's dementia risk reduction in terms of brain health. It could be any condition. So again, what are the priorities for the condition? So what are the priorities in that country? Identifying the myths or the key tenets of the different conditions, and deciding the content of the game for the cultural context, and then identifying who will play the game. So is this for health profession students? Is it going to be for the public? Is it going to be for children? So we've done quite a lot of work with children as well across the different games that we've been developing. So again, we also need to ensure culturally responsive figures, colors, and gameplay. And that was something that we learnt, very that we work very closely with our colleagues in Indonesia, for example. We are now working with colleagues in China to develop, culturally co-design a Chinese, caregiver dementia game. And we're using this process to achieve that. So in Vietnam, we worked with health profession students, nursing rehabilitation and public health students from the University of Medicine and Pharmacy in Ho Chi Minh City. This was, we are in partnership with the School of Nursing, the College of Nursing in the university, and we use this co-design process to develop a brain health game for the students in Vietnam. And what the students told us was that we had 4 groups of students, and they came up with 4 different ideas. So what that showed us is that we needed different rooms in order to reflect the ideas that the different groups of students had come up. So we have now a much more what we would call a fantasy escape room. Here it's called the Super Brain. This very much will lead on from our kids' brain quests that we have also co-designed with primary school children. So this is the Ancient's Vault, and again, it's puzzles. You have to remember things. So because this is about brain health, not only have we got questions about brain health to get people to understand the importance of nutrition against protecting your brain from injury, the importance of hydration, but equally we're getting them to solve puzzles, which again is which is part of enabling brain health. So this not only supports students' understanding of brain health, but what we're trying to do is actually work with their brain health at the same time. So this then has led on, this is part of a broader project, broader project of brain health, which we started with our colleague, Dr. Rebecca Townsend, who is now working in the University of Newcastle in the UK, and Dr. Claire McAvoy from the Centre of Public Health at QUB, where we actually co-designed a kids' brain health game. So one of the things that we realized is that we needed to really work with our UK students. So after working with our Vietnamese students, we thought it's really important to work with our UK students. So my colleague Elizabeth Henderson, who's not able to be here today, worked with our UK students in an Ambition to Success, a leadership program that is run by colleagues Dr. Steph Craig and Dr. Gary Mitchell, and used our co-design process to actually come up with a slightly different approach to the brain health game. And this brain health game really reflects our dementia awareness game in terms of its approach. So one of the things that our students and some of the students in Vietnam came up with was this idea of a brain, that we wanted to actually go through a brain. So we weren't able to actually do that particular approach for this game because we were very constrained in terms of time. So we worked with Focus Games and use the same process that we use with the dementia awareness game, so that it's actually, we're thinking about brain health in terms of protecting people from dementia and reducing people's risk of dementia. And so then they can play the brain health game, and then they'll be able to move into the dementia awareness game. So this was a process. You can see what the students have done, and we've done a mixed methods evaluation using both pre and post questionnaires to measure the knowledge, attitudes, and self-efficacy, and then we were followed by qualitative focus groups. So we've got some key findings. The publication is being written and will be submitted fairly shortly. But you can see here we had 200 participants play the game, and 111 provided full pre and post test results. So we found that there were statistically significant improvements across all of our measured domains. So this was the attitudes to brain health, had a large effect size, and so there was a significant increase in people's people having much more positive attitudes towards their brain health. They were much more they felt more able to measure to deal with their brain health. So that was a smaller effect size. And then they found in terms of their brain health behavior, they also found a statistically significant mean increase, which is also a small effect size. And then we invited 15 people into focus groups, and there were 3 key themes that came from that. So people actually discovered more about brain health. They thought they knew about it, but then they realized there was a lot more to it, such as hydration, exercise. So while they thought about playing brain games, they didn't realize that actually looking after our physical health was just as important to our brain as it was to our heart, as an example. And again, they said that the game made brain health feel doable. So it was something quick and easy. There were there were ideas that came up through the questions and answers that actually demonstrated to them that they could do something easy to change their behavior. And so they went from knowledge to action. You know, they felt that they weren't powerless. They were able to do things, you know, quite easily to make, you know, key changes in their towards their brain health. So we've got some more work to be doing on that, and we will be evaluating that now with our nursing students this September. And that follows on very much in the same light that we've done with our dementia awareness game, where we've actually tested this out across health professions in terms of our nursing students at QUB, our nursing and pharmacy students at QUB. And we've just completed a project that has gone across the UK and the island of Ireland with not only with nursing, but with all allied, with nursing, medicine, pharmacy, and allied health as well. And we have submitted that publication. We're just waiting for the reviewers to come back to us on that. So you can see that we start off small. We start off with a small project around dementia awareness, then we test it out with our nursing students with one group. We then extend that to other health professions, again, within our own organization. And then we can move across different organizations to assess whether or not it has an impact that goes just beyond our immediate context. So that gives you a little bit of a view about how you can scale up from a small program. And we are now following the same pathway with our brain health game. And we'll be following similar pathways with both our delirium game, escape room, and our clinical skills game as well. So where does that leave us in terms of curriculum design? It's great having these games, you know, and it's really important to have them. When we have, you know, at QUB, you'll hear from across much of our team that we have a whole range of games and gamified resources, but they're not of any value unless we know students are using them. So how do we embed them across our curriculum? So this is a curriculum design perspective about how I think all nurse education can actually look at that. So we start off globally, you know, across our curriculum with this culture of co-production, where we engage our students, our practice partners, our service users in curriculum design. We don't just write the curriculum by ourselves as academics. But of course, you know, we are a professional program, so we have to think about our nursing board requirements. That's for the NMC in the UK, and India will have their own nursing board. We have to think about how the games reflect the pedagogy within the curriculum. So our curriculum is very much around active learning. We use universal design for learning principles across our entire program. So of course, this aligns very nicely with the embedding of serious games across our curriculum. Again, we have to think about how they align with graduate attributes. So one of our graduate attributes is to ensure that our nurses come up with good critical thinking skills. And of course, what we have seen from the evidence from our umbrella reviews is that escape rooms, serious games very much promote this critical thinking for our students. Again, we need to make sure they're aligned with module learning outcomes. So of course, I wouldn't be putting our dementia awareness game or our delirium game in modules that weren't actually talking about those conditions. So it's again looking at that, and how will our games support the assessment of our students? So again, our clinical skills game is very much around focusing the students on how they will be supported in their formative assessment of their simulation. So again, we need to think at program, so that's if we're looking at it in our policy and governance, but then again at curriculum level, we need to have a think about what are the games used for across the curriculum, where are they? Think about our scaffolding, thinking about our pedagogical approach. And one of the things that we have found from the literature is there isn't a lot of pedagogy reported in many of the serious games research or the gamification research. So again, we need to ensure that we are actually writing about the pedagogy that we use, and also make sure we have good quality evaluation to add to our evidence base. So some of our earlier work will just simply be pre-post, and sometimes you have to be pragmatic, and maybe that's all you can do. But equally, if you can do that across multiple disciplines, if you can do that across multiple universities, that would still work quite well. But equally, if there's the opportunity to do controlled trials or even randomized controlled trials, well, then we need to be thinking about what that might look like and involving other organizations and collaborating in order to achieve that higher level of evidence. But at module level, we need to get the students to use the games. Student champions are a really good way. We found that student champions work very well. We usually engage a student champion as part of our research team, and then they may actually also be involved. We do have students who are involved in our in the writing up of our research, and they are now coming back as PhD students onto our programs and working with us on other, on other research. So that's very exciting. As learning opportunities, we need to timetable them. So games need to be, as you would expect any other type of research to be undertaken in terms of the curriculum. So timetabling them in, and also make sure that students see how it supports their assessment. And finally, it's, at the very individual student element, it's actually thinking about how we co-design those games with both students and academics. We look at it from both an ethical perspective in terms of power balance, but equally we look at it from a pragmatic perspective as well. So this is a socio-ecological model that I've developed in terms of curriculum design, and I've adapted it for today, in terms of how we can embed our serious games across our curricula. So what are the future directions for research in nurse education and serious games? We need to think about further studies with a control group to compare with other forms of learning. So not just usual practice, which is what we've been doing as our first step at Queen's, but also, what are other forms of digital learning? VR is an example that we're thinking about. We have a dementia simulation just as an example, and our colleagues in Singapore have a dementia VR, and we're thinking about how we might set up a project that compares our dementia simulation, our dementia awareness games, and our dementia VR. So watch this space. We do have to get some funding for that. And then one of the other things that have come through our umbrella reviews very clearly is that co-design and evaluation is that there are very few games that have been co-designed in low and middle income countries. Our Indonesia game is one that has been. We've also co-designed our escape room in Vietnam. But we need to work more with colleagues in different countries in order to make sure that these are culturally responsive learning opportunities. And again, we need to co-create our approaches to gaming to enhance behavior change. So we'll be actually taking that forward in our brain health game. And obviously, I think for us collectively, we also need to think about the development of a behavior change model for serious games in healthcare, and then identify how does this impact on our patient outcomes. So food for thought. Serious games is a really exciting very exciting way of developing our curricula. It's a way that engages our students. All of our students that have been engaged in co-design all say how much they've learned from the co-design process. And equally, our colleagues who have been engaged in the co-design process have also said how much they have learned about facilitation and working with students. So it is a process I really both enjoy, and I really, really encourage people to engage with. So I've put up some of our associated publications from the work that we've done. Here is some further reading for serious games. And I just want to say thank you all, and apologies, Melvin, I think I've gone over my time, but thank you all so much for your participation today.